A massive Imperial scout fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their sleek ships gleaming under the distant sunlight. Commander Robert Wells of the Imperial Scout Force stood proudly on his bridge, watching the primitive solar system through the main viewport. His orders were simple: prepare another system for absorption into the mighty Galactic Empire. Scan for artificial structures and defense systems, Wells ordered, his voice carrying the boredom of someone who had done this 100 times before. These primitive worlds were all the same: a few satellites, maybe some basic space stations, and absolutely no chance against Imperial might. "Sir," initial scans show. Nothing. His sensor officer reported, frowning at his screens. Just some primitive satellites and space junk. Wells nodded, unsurprised. As expected, move the fleet in. Standard formation. The Imperial ships began their advance toward Earth, their engines pulsing with blue energy. They passed Mars without incident, their sensors still showing nothing but scattered debris and old satellites. Then everything changed. Space itself seemed to ripple, like waves on a pond. Where there had been nothing but empty void moments before, now stood Earth's defense fleet. The ships were unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered, sleek, dark vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Wells stumbled backward, his face pale. Impossible. Where did they come from? Before he could give any orders, every screen on his bridge lit up with an incoming transmission. A man in a dark blue uniform appeared. Admiral James Porter of Earth's United Defense Force. Imperial vessels. This is Earth Defense Command. Porter's voice was calm but firm. You have entered restricted space. The Sol system is closed to Imperial traffic. Return to your space immediately. Wells recovered from his shock, anger replacing fear. This is Commander Wells of the Imperial Scout Force. You dare to order the Empire. Your primitive world will submit to Imperial rule or face destruction. A small smile crossed Porter's face. Commander, I don't think you understand your situation. This isn't a negotiation. Look at your tactical display. Wells turned to his tactical officer, who was frantically working at his console. Sir, Earth vessels have. They've surrounded us completely. Their weapons. I've never seen readings like these. You have 1 standard hour to turn around and leave. Porter continued. Any hostile action will be met with an appropriate response. Wells slammed his fist on his command chair. Open fire. Show these primitives the power of the Empire. The Imperial ships launched their attack, energy weapons blazing toward Earth's fleet. But their shots passed harmlessly through empty space. The Earth ships had moved faster than the Imperial targeting systems could track. Very well, Porter sighed. A demonstration is required. A single pulse of energy rippled out from the Earth fleet. As it passed through the Imperial ships, every system went dark. Engines died, weapons powered down, and even life support switched to emergency backup power. Panic spread through the Imperial fleet. Wells watched helplessly as his mighty warships drifted in space, reduced to powerless hulks by a single attack that hadn't even caused any physical damage. This was a warning. Porter's voice came through the emergency channels. The only systems still working. We disabled your ships without destroying them. Your crews are safe, and minimal power for life support remains active. In exactly 1 hour, your systems will restart, giving you enough power to return home. Wells stared at the view screen in disbelief as Porter continued. Take this message to your empire. Earth is not interested in your politics, your conquests, or your rule. We have observed your civilization for decades and want no part of it. The Sol system is forbidden territory. Any future incursions will be met with increasingly less gentle responses. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial fleet floating helplessly in space. Through the viewport, Wells could see the Earth ships shimmer and vanish, their cloaking technology making them invisible once again. For the first time in his career, Wells felt real fear, not just for himself, but for the Empire. They had stumbled onto something far more dangerous than a primitive civilization. They had found a world that had surpassed them while staying hidden, a world that didn't want to conquer, only to be left alone. Exactly 1 hour later, as promised, the Imperial ship's systems came back online. Wells didn't hesitate. He ordered an immediate retreat, already dreading the report he would have to make to his superiors. The Empire had just been served notice. Earth was off limits, and it had the power to enforce that demand. 2 weeks after the humiliating defeat of the Scout fleet, Ambassador Marcus Reed stood before the Imperial Council, trying to hide his nervousness. As a human from one of the Empire's first conquered worlds, he had been chosen for this crucial diplomatic mission. The Empire believed his human heritage would help him understand and manipulate Earth's leaders. "Your Majesty," Reed addressed Emperor Alan IV, "I accept the mission to negotiate with Earth. However, I must warn you. The reports from Commander Wells suggest we are dealing with something unprecedented." The Emperor waved his hand dismissively. "Every world thinks itself special. Ambassador, go to Earth. Offer them the standard terms of surrender. Show them the benefits of imperial rule." 3 days later, Reed's diplomatic vessel approached Earth's orbit. Unlike the Scout fleet, his ship was allowed to proceed after thorough scans. As they descended through the atmosphere, Reed watched in amazement at the sight below. He had expected to see a world similar to his own before the Empire's conquest. Instead, he saw vast, clean cities with flying vehicles and structures that seemed to defy gravity. The diplomatic party was escorted to the United Defense Council headquarters, a towering building in what was once called New York. Reed noticed there were no visible weapons or guards, yet he felt watched at every moment. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Reed," Council Director Anna Wilson greeted him. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were sharp. "We've been expecting you." "Director Wilson." Reed bowed slightly. "The Empire extends its hand in friendship and offers Earth a place among the stars." Wilson's smile didn't waver as she led him into a large conference room. The walls suddenly transformed into screens, showing scenes from across the galaxy. "Let's be honest, Ambassador," Wilson said, pressing a button. The screens began showing images that made Reed's blood run cold: secret Imperial concentration camps, the suppression of native cultures, the systematic exploitation of resources leaving entire worlds barren. How did you get these images?" Reed stammered. "We've had cloaked observation posts throughout Imperial space for over 50 years, Wilson replied. "We've watched, learned, and decided we want no part of your empire." Reed tried to regain his composure. "The Empire brings order, technology, advancement. Like the advancement you brought to your own world, Ambassador." Wilson interrupted. Another screen lit up, showing Reed's homeworld before and after Imperial conquest. The once beautiful cities were now industrial wastelands. "That's not. I mean," Reed felt his carefully prepared arguments crumbling. "We have a counteroffer," Wilson continued. She handed him a data tablet. "These are our terms. The Empire will acknowledge Sol as sovereign space and forbidden territory. In return, we'll remain neutral in galactic affairs." Reed read the terms, his eyes widening. "These demands are unprecedented. The Empire would never." "Perhaps a demonstration will help you understand our position," Wilson said. She pressed another button, and the building's walls became transparent. Reed gasped as he saw the city below shimmer and change. Massive defense installations and military facilities that had been completely hidden by some kind of advanced holographic technology appeared everywhere. "This is just one city, Ambassador," Wilson explained. "Earth could have conquered the Empire years ago. We chose not to. We're not interested in ruling others. We simply wish to be left alone." But why show me all this?" Reed asked. "Because you're different," Wilson smiled. "Our intelligence suggests you've never fully supported the Empire's methods. We're showing you the truth so you can make an informed choice about your future actions." Reed stood in silence, looking at his homeworld's images again. He thought about his childhood before the Empire came, about the promises of advancement that turned into exploitation and oppression. The Empire won't accept these terms, he finally said. We know, Wilson replied. They'll probably try to attack us again. But now you understand why that would be a mistake. You can help prevent unnecessary losses. As Reed prepared to leave Earth, his mind was in turmoil. His report would determine the Empire's next actions, and for the first time in his diplomatic career, he wondered if complete honesty might be the best policy. Looking back at Earth through his ship's viewport, he made his decision. He would tell the Emperor everything he had seen. Not because he served the Empire, but because he wanted to prevent the destruction that would surely follow if the Empire made the mistake of attacking Earth again. Sometimes, he realized, the best diplomacy was simply telling the truth, no matter how uncomfortable that truth might be. Emperor Alan IV stood at his palace window, his face red with rage as he read Ambassador Reed's report for the third time. The images and data from Earth mocked him, challenging everything the Empire stood for. No world had ever dared to make such demands of the Empire. Enough, he roared, throwing the data tablet across the room. If Earth wants to play with power, we'll show them true Imperial might. Within hours, the largest battle fleet in Imperial history assembled near the Empire's central starbase. 500 warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent. Admiral Peter Stone, the Empire's most decorated commander, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Fist. Your Majesty, Stone bowed before the Emperor's hologram. The fleet stands ready. We will crush this rebellious world and show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Empire. The Emperor's hologram nodded. Destroy their defenses, break their spirit, make an example of them. The massive fleet jumped into hyperspace, emerging at the edge of the Sol system 3 days later. This time, Earth's defense fleet was waiting for them openly. Just 20 ships against the Empire's 500. Admiral Stone laughed at the sight. They send so few to face us. Open a channel. The familiar face of Admiral Porter appeared on screen. He looked calm, almost bored. Admiral Stone, we've been expecting you. I see you brought friends. This is your last chance, Stone declared. Surrender now, and we may spare your major cities. Porter sighed. We did warn you. All units, activate the grid. Suddenly, thousands of small objects throughout the solar system lit up with energy. The Empire's sensors hadn't detected them. Satellites, asteroids, and what looked like space debris revealed themselves as parts of an enormous defense network. What trickery is this? Stone demanded. No tricks, Porter replied. Just preparation. Last chance to retreat. Stone's response was to order all ships to open fire. 500 Imperial warships unleashed their weapons at once, enough firepower to crack a planet. The energy beams and plasma torpedoes raced toward Earth's small fleet. Then something impossible happened. A shimmering field appeared between the fleets. The Imperial weapons fire entered it and vanished. No explosions, no impacts. The attacks simply ceased to exist. Quantum deletion field, Porter explained casually. Your weapon's energy is being transferred to another dimension. Would you like to see what else we can do? Before Stone could respond, blue lights from Earth's defense grid activated. Beams of energy connected the satellites in a complex web throughout the solar system. Within seconds, 300 Imperial ships found themselves without power, their crews floating helplessly in space. Impossible, Stone screamed. All remaining ships, concentrate fire on their fleet. The Earth ships finally moved. They didn't dodge or evade. They simply phased out of existence, reappearing instantly behind the Imperial fleet. Small darts of white light shot out from their weapons. Wherever these lights touched an Imperial ship, its technology simply stopped working. No explosions, no destruction, just total technological failure. In less than 5 minutes, the greatest fleet in Imperial history had been reduced to floating metal shells. Not a single ship had been destroyed, but none of them could move, fight, or even communicate except through emergency backup systems. Admiral Porter's face appeared on every ship's emergency channel. Your crews are safe. Life support and basic systems will remain functional. As before, full power will be restored in 1 hour, enough time for you to reconsider your choices and return home. Stone watched helplessly as Earth's ships vanished again, leaving his mighty fleet drifting in space. He had commanded battles for 40 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The Empire's greatest weapons had been useless. Their strongest shields might as well have been paper, and Earth hadn't even killed anyone. They had simply rendered the Imperial fleet helpless. An hour later, as promised, power returned to the Imperial ships. Stone gave the retreat order immediately. As his fleet limped away from the Sol system, he realized that the Empire had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't just found a powerful enemy. They had awakened a sleeping giant that had been watching them, judging them, and found them wanting. The Empire had finally met its match, and for the first time in its history, it had no choice but to accept defeat. 3 weeks after the Empire's humiliating defeat, a small merchant ship drifted through the outer edges of the Sol system. Unlike the Imperial vessels, this ship was old, patched together with parts from a dozen different worlds. Its captain, Thomas Reed, stood nervously at the controls, watching Earth's defense grid scan his vessel. "Brother, I hope you were right about this," he muttered, thinking of Ambassador Marcus Reed's secret message that had brought him here. A light flashed on his console. An incoming transmission. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself," a calm voice ordered. "This is Captain Thomas Reed of the Free World's Resistance," he responded, his voice steady despite his fear. "My brother Marcus told me Earth might be willing to hear us out." There was a long pause. Then, without warning, his ship was enveloped in blue light. When it faded, he found himself in a massive hangar bay. Armed guards approached his ship, led by a tall woman he recognized from his brother's reports, Director Anna Wilson. "Welcome to Earth, Captain Reed," she said as he descended his ship's ramp. "Your brother spoke highly of you." Thomas looked around the hangar, noting technology he had never seen before. "I had to come, after what you did to the Imperial fleet. There's hope now. Real hope." Wilson led him through the facility to a conference room, where several other people waited, representatives from Earth's United Defense Council. Among them sat his brother Marcus, who rose to embrace him. "They'd given me asylum," Marcus explained. "I couldn't go back to supporting the Empire after what I learned here." Thomas nodded, then turned to address the council. "I represent a network of resistance movements across 20 Imperial worlds. We've been fighting the Empire for years, but we've never had a real chance until now. What you did, it changed everything." He activated a holographic projector, showing maps of Imperial space. Red dots appeared across the display. Resistance cells, hidden bases, sympathetic officials within the Imperial government. "The Empire isn't as stable as it appears," Thomas continued. "Every conquered world has its rebels, its freedom fighters. We're scattered, but we're everywhere. And now, after your victory, people are starting to believe victory is possible." Director Wilson studied the maps carefully. "We've observed many of these resistance movements. But why come to us now? Because you did something nobody thought possible. You said no to the Empire, and made it stick," Thomas replied. "We don't want your territory or your resources. We just want to learn how to defend ourselves." The council members exchanged looks. One of them, an older man with gray hair, spoke up. "Our policy has been non-interference. Getting involved in galactic politics could draw us into endless conflicts." Thomas stood straighter. "With respect, you're already involved. The Empire won't stop coming. They can't allow you to exist. Your very presence gives hope to every world that wants to be free." He pressed a button, and new images appeared. Slave labor camps, stripped mining worlds, cultures being systematically erased. "This is happening right now," he said quietly. "We're not asking you to fight our battles. We're asking you to teach us to defend ourselves. like you defended Earth." The council chamber fell silent. Director Wilson stepped forward, studying the images. "You understand we won't provide offensive weapons. Our technology is defensive only." Thomas smiled. "That's exactly what we need. The Empire's power comes from fear. Fear of their weapons, their ships, their armies. But you showed everyone that their weapons can be stopped. If we can do that too, the Empire would collapse." Marcus finished. "Not from violence, but from losing their power to threaten and intimidate." Wilson looked at the council members, who nodded one by one. "Very well, Captain Reed. We'll establish a training program for your resistance members. Defensive technologies only. Shields, cloaking systems, countermeasures. How soon can your people begin arriving?" Thomas grinned. "They're already on their way. We just needed to know Earth would help." As the details were worked out, Thomas watched his brother talking with the Earth officials. For the first time in years, he felt real hope. Earth hadn't just banned the Empire. They had shown the galaxy that resistance was possible. The Empire's days of unchallenged rule were numbered, and they didn't even know it yet. In the depths of Earth's Cyber Command Center, Director Jack Turner watched as thousands of data streams flowed across his holographic displays. 6 months had passed since the meeting with the Resistance, and Earth had decided to fight the Empire in a way no one expected, with information. "Launch Phase 3, Turner ordered, his fingers dancing across the control panel. Around him, dozens of technicians coordinated their attacks, their faces lit by the blue glow of their screens. Across Imperial space, something remarkable began to happen. Every video screen, every datapad, every communication device suddenly started broadcasting the truth. Citizens watched in shock as hidden camera footage showed the Empire's secret labor camps. News feeds displayed the real costs of Imperial expansion. Personal messages revealed the corruption of their leaders. In his palace, Emperor Alan IV stared in horror as his private financial records appeared on every screen in the capital city. "Shut it down." He screamed at his technical advisors. "Shut everything down now." But they couldn't. Earth's cyber attack was unlike anything they had seen before. Every time they blocked one transmission, 10 more appeared. When they shut down one network, the data found new paths. Back on Earth, Turner allowed himself a small smile. "Move to Phase 4, he ordered. Now the Empire's military communications began to fail. Warships received conflicting orders. Defense systems displayed phantom threats. Supply lines got scrambled. The mighty Imperial war machine was falling into chaos without a single shot being fired. "Sir," one of Turner's technicians called out, "we're getting responses from citizens across Imperial space. They're sharing the data, adding their own stories. It's spreading faster than we expected." On the Imperial capital world, crowds gathered in the streets. They carried data pads showing proof of the Emperor's crimes. Imperial guards tried to disperse them, but for every group they scattered, 3 more appeared. Admiral Stone, still haunted by his defeat at Earth, watched from his flagship as his fleet systems became increasingly unreliable. "Status report," he demanded. "Sir, nothing works properly," his technical officer replied. "Our targeting systems show friendly ships as enemies. Navigation keeps resetting itself. We can't trust any of our instruments." In the Cyber Command Center, Turner received a priority message from Director Wilson. "The Resistance reports demonstrations on 30 worlds," she said. "How long can you keep this up?" "Indefinitely," Turner replied. "We're not forcing our way into their systems anymore. The Empire's own citizens are spreading the information now. They're hungry for the truth." On 1,000 worlds, the Empire's carefully maintained control was crumbling. People watched videos of Earth's defense of their system, seeing for the first time that the mighty Empire could be stopped. They shared stories of successful resistance. Hope spread like wildfire. The Imperial Palace's communications center became a scene of panic. "My lords," a technician reported to the gathered nobles, "we can't stop it. Every time we close a channel, they open 2 more. The Earth humans, They're not just better at this than we are. It's like they're playing a completely different game. Emperor Allen raged as reports flooded in. Military bases were standing down as soldiers learned the truth about their missions. Imperial governors were surrendering to their own citizens. The carefully maintained lies that had held his empire together were unraveling at lightning speed. "Launch the fleet," he ordered. "All of it. Destroy Earth now." But the fleet didn't move. Crews refused to board ships after seeing proof of the Emperor's corruption. Commanders stood down rather than lead suicide missions against Earth's defenses. In the Cyber Command Center, Turner watched the Empire's collapse accelerate. "They never understood," he said quietly. "They thought power came from weapons and ships. They never realized that information was the greatest power of all." Director Wilson's hologram appeared beside him. "The Resistance reports that the Imperial military is standing down on multiple worlds. It seems your information war worked even better than we hoped." Turner nodded, watching as more and more Imperial citizens joined the revolution. Earth hadn't fired a single shot, hadn't destroyed a single ship. They had simply shown people the truth and let them decide for themselves. The Empire was falling, not to weapons or armies, but to something far more powerful, the unstoppable force of truth spreading freely among its people. The Imperial Palace shook as another explosion rocked the capital city. Emperor Allen IV stood at his window, watching as his empire crumbled around him. His personal guard had abandoned him hours ago, leaving him alone with the truth he had tried so hard to deny. Across the room, a holographic display showed the chaos spreading across Imperial space. One by one, worlds were declaring their independence. Military bases were surrendering to local populations. The mighty Imperial fleet was scattered, many ships now pledging loyalty to their home worlds rather than the Empire. "First the outer worlds," Allen muttered, watching another system turn from Imperial purple to the green of independence on his display. "Then the trading hubs. Now even the core worlds stand against me." On the colony world of Nova Prime, Admiral Stone watched his crews abandon their posts. The truth about Earth's defensive technology had spread through the ranks. There would be no victory against such power. But it wasn't just fear driving them away. Earth's information campaign had shown them proof of the Empire's lies, corruption, and crimes. "Admiral," his last remaining officer reported, "the governor has surrendered. The people are celebrating in the streets. They're calling for a new council, elected by the people." Stone nodded slowly. "Then it's over. Send the message. Nova Prime fleet stands down. All ships return to planetary defense only." Back on Earth, Director Wilson met with the United Defense Council. The Resistance leader Thomas Reed stood before them, bringing news from across former Imperial space. "It's happening faster than anyone expected," Thomas reported. 17 core worlds have already formed a new alliance based on Earth's defensive principles. They're calling it the Free Systems Coalition. Wilson studied the reports and the Imperial military. "Most have returned to defend their home worlds," Thomas replied. "They're requesting training in Earth's defensive technologies. They want to ensure no one can conquer them again." In the Imperial capital, the palace defenses finally failed. Citizens poured into the grand halls, led by former Imperial officials who had seen the truth in Earth's revelations. They found Emperor Allen in his throne room, sitting alone. "You've won," he said quietly as they approached. "Earth didn't need to fire a single shot. They just needed to show everyone the truth." Marcus Reed, who had helped coordinate the civilian response, stepped forward. "The truth was always there. Earth just helped us see it. Stand down, Emperor. It's over." Across the galaxy, new governments were forming. But unlike the Empire, they focused on defense rather than conquest. Earth's example had shown them a better way. The power to protect without the need to dominate. On 100 worlds, people gathered in squares and assembly halls to write new constitutions. The principles were often the same: the right to self-defense, the importance of truth, the rejection of conquest and oppression. Director Wilson received constant updates as the changes swept across former Imperial space. "They're all requesting the same thing," she told her council. "They want to learn our defensive technologies, not to attack others, but to ensure they can never be conquered again." Thomas Reed, standing with his brother Marcus, smiled. "Earth showed us that true strength isn't about how many worlds you can conquer. It's about being able to stand firm and say no to those who would conquer you." The council chamber's displays showed celebrations across the former empire. People danced in streets that had seen battles just days before. Former enemies worked together to build new governments. The age of imperial conquest was over. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. Wilson looked at the brothers. "Now the real work begins. These worlds need to learn to defend themselves without becoming new empires. They need to build trust after generations of fear." "And Earth?" Thomas asked. "Will you rejoin Galactic society?" Wilson smiled. "Perhaps, but for now, we'll do what we've always done. Watch, wait, and help those who want to build something better than Empire." As the day ended, news spread across the former Imperial worlds. The Emperor had surrendered. The empire that had lasted 300 years had fallen not to weapons or wars, but to the simple power of truth and the example of a world that chose defense over conquest. The age of empires was over. The age of free worlds had begun. 1 year after the empire's collapse, representatives from 100 worlds gathered in Earth's orbital conference station. The massive structure floated peacefully above the blue planet that had changed the course of galactic history. Director Wilson stood at the main podium, looking out at the diverse gathering. Former Imperial worlds sat next to longtime resistance fighters. Ex-Imperial military officers shared tables with the rebels they had once hunted. All of them were here to formalize the new galactic order. "We gather here today," Wilson began, "not to create a new empire, but to ensure no empire can ever rise again." Thomas Reed, now representing the Free Systems Coalition, stood to present their proposal. "We've learned from Earth's example. Each world in our coalition has adopted defensive technologies. Our focus is protecting our own people, not controlling others." The station's holographic displays showed the new political map of the galaxy. Where the Empire's purple had once dominated, now dozens of colors represented independent worlds and small alliances. Trade routes connected them all, but no single power controlled the lanes. Marcus Reed, serving as chief coordinator for the Transition Council, brought up the next topic. "Earth's defensive technology has spread to 42 worlds so far. Each has sworn to use it only for protection, never conquest." The former Emperor Alan, now simply Citizen Alan, watched from a corner of the chamber. He had been allowed to attend as a witness to history, a reminder of the old order's passing. "I still don't understand," he said quietly to Wilson during a break. "Earth could have conquered everything. Why didn't you?" Wilson smiled. "Because true strength isn't about controlling others. It's about being strong enough to live in peace, to help others stand on their own." The conference continued for 3 days. New treaties were signed, not of dominance, but of mutual protection. Trade agreements were forged based on fair exchange rather than exploitation. The principles Earth had demonstrated, defense over offense, truth over propaganda, freedom over control, became the foundation of the new order. In the final session, Director Wilson announced Earth's new role. "The Sol system will remain closed to unauthorized traffic," she declared, "but we will serve as neutral mediators when asked, teachers when needed, and defenders of last resort if a new power tries to build an empire." The station's observation deck became a place for informal meetings. Former enemies found common ground as they looked down at Earth, the world that had shown them a different path. "Look at that," Thomas said to his brother Marcus as they watched ships from dozens of worlds moving peacefully through space. No Imperial patrols, no conquest fleets, just traders and explorers. Marcus nodded. "Earth banned the Empire, but they gave us something better: the power to ban all empires." In the following months, Earth's prediction proved true. Several worlds tried to build new empires, but they found conquest impossible against worlds protected by Earth's defensive technology. Trade became the only path to prosperity, cooperation the only road to power. The United Defense Council received regular updates from across the galaxy. Former imperial worlds were rebuilding, focusing on their own development rather than expansion. The resistance fighters had become leaders, engineers, and teachers, helping their people build better futures. They're calling Earth the Forbidden System in some parts of space, Wilson told her council, but not because we're weak or hostile, because we're strong enough to help others without ruling them. The final ceremony marked the official end of the imperial era. Representatives from all worlds watched as the last imperial warships were converted into defensive platforms, their weapons replaced with shields and early warning systems. As the gathered leaders prepared to return home, they took one last look at Earth through the station's windows. The planet that had banned an empire had given them something precious, not just freedom from imperial rule, but freedom from the cycle of conquest and oppression that had dominated galactic history. Earth remained apart, its system closed to casual visitors, but its example echoed across the stars. True power lay not in the ability to conquer, but in the strength to stand alone while helping others do the same. The empire was gone. In its place stood something far stronger, a galaxy of free worlds, each standing proud, each defending their own, and all of them remembering the world that had shown them the way.